All right, everyone, welcome back to the Dealmakers, where we go inside the minds of top performers in real estate, business, and beyond. I'm your host, Shane Hall, and today's guest is someone who has built a legacy in Annapolis that stretches from the lacrosse field to the mortgage desk. He's a former D1 athlete, a father of 6, how about that, and the current branch manager of USA Mortgage in Annapolis. But what makes Jamison Mullen's story special is the hustle. From pouring drinks behind a bar to producing millions in home loans annually, his path is one of grit, loyalty, and leadership. We're going to dive into Jamison's UVA days, how his competitive edge shaped his career, and what makes a great lender in today's market and deals that help define his journey. So let's get into it. Jamison, welcome, man.
Thanks, Shane. Appreciate the intro.
Absolutely, man. So let's go to the beginning. What was life growing up in Annapolis like?
Oh, man. So I grew up on the hard streets of Cape St. Clair.
I know them well.
I tell folks, I had the pleasure of growing up in a little waterfront community like Cape St. Clair, kids running around everywhere. My next door neighbor actually was a babysitter. It was kind of like built-in friends already growing, get home from school and go over there. And she's the kind of babysitter that probably wouldn't fly today. Too many kids, kids. And she had a pool and it was, mayhem everywhere, but it was a blast. So my brother and I, kind of from early age got to socialize and, you're running around with, kids in Cape St. Clair. And back then it was jump on your bike and go find something to do. I haven't been to Cape in years, and I'm not sure how it is now, but I can't imagine a better way, than kind of growing up near a beach, fields right there, everything kind of contained in one area, and everything you need as a kid, and plenty of kids. I mean, your elementary school's right there. It was phenomenal. So, then both my parents were born and raised in Annapolis, so our family's been around for. Well, my mom's side, a couple hundred years. My dad's side, since kind of after the war. My mom grew up on Duke of Gloucester. My dad was out one of the first houses in Hammer Heights.
No kidding.
Yeah, so
damn.
Incredible, right? So we kind of knew everybody. My dad was somewhat of a local lacrosse legend. My mom, like I said, grew up downtown Annapolis. Her father was original yacht club, like old school yacht club.
Oh, wow.
When I say old school yacht club, before, it obviously well before the fire, well before even the flood, when they had money issues.
Yeah.
And back then everybody was just a sailor, strictly a sailing, gig. And they would go and play cards. Well, they would go sail, and then they'd go back and play cards, and they were all Manhattan drinkers, and it was a true sailing experience. It's a little different now going to the yacht club, which is some of the best food in town. So I grew up downtown Annapolis with my grandparents. I grew up on Navy Golf Course with my grandfather, who lived right backed up to Navy. It was cool, man. I wouldn't change it for the world. I love, being born and raised in Annapolis. I love being a true Annapolitan family that, we're all kind of still here. It says something about a town where your family really doesn't, like, everybody's back. Like, there's not a lot of people that leave, it seems like, which is pretty cool.
Do you ever have that thought about getting out and going somewhere else?
It's funny you say that. I just said to my family this morning, I said, maybe I'll just move to Florida. My one daughter is a sophomore in high school looking at me like I'm, two heads and you're crazy dad. But no, not really. I mean, it's too hard. We have, my wife's family's all here. Tara's family's all here. My family's still all here. We're downtown Annapolis for Christmas. We're downtown Annapolis for school. We're on the water all summer. It's just, it'd be a big change. I would like to, maybe have a second home somewhere someday, but we need to have, with 6 kids, I got to get into college before I start thinking about a second home.
Yeah, you do, man.
This is a great place to be. It's a hard sell going anywhere else.
Yeah, I get that, man. So you come from a lacrosse family. You mentioned your dad, Terp legend. How about it? Yeah. All right. How did that shape your discipline and competitive mindset?
I grew up with my dad coaching everything, so he coached my brother and I, Cape St. Clair, in the old school days, the fields were literally just across from the growls down there. We knew everybody. We played with the same guys for 5 or 6 years, it wasn't clubbed, it wasn't bouncing around.
Yeah.
You grew up, wanting to, beat the hell out of Smyrna Park guys or Edgewater guys, or you got tired of getting the South County boys beating the heck out of you, or the, Annapolis boys, beating the heck out of you on the field. Like, so it was, you kind of grew up together, and it wasn't like going out, let's go find a better player. We had to just get better. And, my dad used to, even in college, he'd be like, come back pitching, you weren't playing or something. He'd be like, just get better, son. Like, you just got to get better. Like, he said that to us all. But that's kind of what we, and that's the mindset you got to have. It's like, you can't always be the victim, right? So, and that's what sports taught us. It was, look, you may not have the most talent in the world, or maybe you're super talented, but you're not using it. Like, you got to fight. You got to work hard. And really, it's one of the reasons why in this business, I think athletes thrive, because you're constantly getting knocked down, right? And then you got to get back up, and it's like a daily fight every single day, and the tough survive.
100%.
So you learn some valuable lessons on the streets of Cape St. Clair. And some of the best lessons were just playing basketball, where like guys like Danny Ferry. I never played with Danny Ferry, but there'd be some great basketball games down at those Cape St. Clair courts, and you're like, it's a fight, and there was no parents around, and it was like everything you did, and there'd be fights, and there'd be twisted ankles and blood and guys, but that's what we did. We loved it. I would, like I said, I wouldn't change anything about it.
No, I feel like we don't get enough of that. We don't get enough taste of that these days, and we don't have. And some people might look at that as an aggressive mindset, but I really don't think it is. I think there's been too much coddling of our younger generations, and it's weird too, because the people that are doing it are the ones that didn't get coddled.
Yeah, I know, it's our fault. It's a hard pill to swallow. Having 6 kids, I fight it myself. Trying to let them fall and get up themselves, or you gotta. It's a fine line between supportive and like overbearing or helicoptering. Yeah. And there's a lot of helicoptering now, and I think some of it's because of the money. Sure. There's a lot of money in sports, so there's a lot of clubs. The parents paying $2,500 to put a kid in a club, they want some say, and they want to see some results. A little different than Cape St. Clair, Exactly. But back to with my dad, the being a lacrosse guy, there wasn't a lot of guys back then that played college lacrosse as coaches. So we had an added benefit having my dad, guys like my dad and Bruce Law. Bruce was a AD, I think, at Old Mill for years. His son played at Broadneck. We all came up together. I mean, if you look at the guys that they coached, I mean, Broadneck won 2 state championships back then. St. Mary's won, MIA championship when I was there with some of those guys. So like there was a benefit to having your dad knowing what he's doing. Now there's tons of us, right? Like a lot of guys that play college lacrosse in our generation that are now coaching their kids. So it's a little like everybody seems to have somebody that knows what they're doing. Back then we didn't. So having my dad was a huge deal for us. Yeah. And going to Maryland games, I grew up going to Terp games, especially Terps hoops and lacrosse. Like that was we loved the hoops. Walt Williams days, and I don't remember Bias. I was too young for that, but a little bit. But then I remember Walt, and then Joe Smith. I remember being at the Joe Smith game when his coming out party. That was one of the coolest things ever. Growing up with my dad, I thought I was going to be a Terp. Like I really did. I grew up. I was going to be a Terp, and I probably would have been a Terp if I hadn't gone to Charlottesville. For a visit, and then you go to Charlottesville. It's just a different.
It's a totally different vibe, man.
And I still love Maryland. I still love College Park, but it was just I think back then it was just something different for me. And I grew up going to Maryland. I was like, all right, I want to try something different. Yeah. I could see. Sometimes you look back and go, well, what if I had gone to Maryland? How different would it have been? Probably a lot. I mean, but I would have loved that too. It would have been fun.
Yeah, you would have made the most of it, man. The College Park campus, even when I was there, was completely different than what it is today. Yeah. So I'm consistently amazed at their recruiting classes and people that they were able to get to sign up.
It's amazing how good the school is now too. It is one of the top institutions around, and what folks don't understand about when they won that national championship in 2002, that totally changed the dynamics of University of Maryland. Not that it wasn't a good public institution before that, but as soon as that happened, you started seeing a new generation of kids from really around the country wanting to go there because they want to be a part of something cool like that. And Ralph Region, I think, had a couple good years after that too. And
he certainly did.
I remember talking to folks that like the applications almost doubled, I think, overnight after they won the championship. So it's amazing what sports will do, right? People, they change the academics at schools.
They really do.
When you have great sports, people want to go there. They want to go and watch it.
You get more eyeballs on you. You get more revenue coming in, and people just want to be a part of something cool.
Right. Sure.
Well, you mentioned St. Mary's earlier.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Cape. What brought you to St. Mary's?
Same type of thing. Mom and Dad were both St. Mary's grads.
Okay.
You know? But quite honestly, I thought growing up I would go to Broadneck. You know, I grew up, a good friend of mine, John Sveck, who's now a college lacrosse coach. Actually, he's in high school now, but he was a longtime college lacrosse coach. His mom taught at Broadneck. You know, we grew up, he and I, best friends, we walk up to Broadneck High School and we'd watch those games. We watch all those guys. There was guys that we idolized. So I thought I was going to go to Broadneck. And then as I got better at lacrosse, and it wasn't that Broadneck wasn't great at lacrosse, it was just I got the legacy of St. Mary's and my father, my uncle, my mom went there. That was kind of the draw. It might have been the opposite of why I didn't go to Maryland. I mean, it might have been I need to form my own path and not do exactly what my dad did.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, it's 30 years ago now, so it's hard for me to really, remember my thinking process. But anyway, so I go to St. Mary's. Rob White and Jim Moorhead were there. Jim Moorhead, legendary coach.
Legendary.
And by the way, so was I'm blanking on his name now. The coach of Broadneck, same thing, legendary guy.
Clay White,
legendary coach. But Moorhead was kind of one of those guys that had been there forever. I don't think he ever lost an out-of-league game, or maybe one ever. And St. Mary's was just so uberly talented. And I was like, I think I kind of want to go try that. I was young. I was probably a year younger than a lot of the guys in my class just because it was September birthday and back then it was different.
Yeah.
But, just ended up, I think somebody got hurt my sophomore year. I made varsity and I maybe started a scrimmage or something. And next thing you know, I'm a starter for 3 years. And, the story was written. It was great because I, could have gone differently. Sometimes an injury just changes things, right? And it might have been mono or something. But anyway, so ended up at St. Mary's and met my wife there. Met so many people that are lifelong friends at St. Mary's High School.
So you did follow your dad's path.
Yes, I did. And I'm still really involved. My dad's president of Rural Blue Club. We raise money for St. Mary's athletics, and so it's a true family thing for us. And I think it's kind of what it keeps us close, to be honest. And St. Mary's there's a lot of family still there. My football coach is still there. Yeah. And I still stop in and see him from time to time and talk to him. My daughter's there now. My wife's teaching there with 3 other kids that are there. So it's I love it. I do. I love it. I love the fact that it's downtown Annapolis. I love the fact that we're small and kind of a chip on our shoulder type thing. Yeah. And how good, how good they still are as a sports kind of group. I mean, they've fallen off depending on the years because there's not an uber amount of talent, and Spalding's got pretty good, but it's when they're years where they're just as good as anybody, and some of these schools are 2-3 times the size.
There are. It's cool to watch, man. I remember I had so I went to South River. That was 2004, 5, 6, 7, and I remember
playing on some awesome teams.
Yeah, no, they had some good teams back then, and they've gone on to do very well in the public scene. But I remember it being it was an event going to a St. Mary's game, and they were just like the size of the athletes, the speed, the knowledge of the game. It was just so much more advanced than what we had. I was always just impressed by it, but I never went. My kid brothers did go. Yeah. And I remember my brother Griffin was on the last MIAA championship team.
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah.
With Ben Revere and Joe Thompson.
That's right. That's right. And dude, watching those guys play, it was like watching a little college team out there playing. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've always noticed about the St. Mary's guys, because it is kind of such a small community, everybody kind of knows each other. They grew up together. They all stick together, and they still hang out to this day. And it could be, I mean, my brother's been graduated for 10 plus years, but his best friends are still the high school kids.
Yeah.
It's not like all these college kids that, you know, you meet and have friends with. Those guys still hang out together all the time. They go to each other's weddings. And I just think that's a really cool thing, man.
Well, I think part of that's the draw of Annapolis too. Like people end up back here, right? So,
Yeah.
And that St. Mary's crew is pretty tight knit. They're not big schools. It's not a big school. So some of the public schools, kids get lost,
Oh yeah.
There's not as, it was just tight knit group. So it was always guys that, we had to be, because there wasn't, you couldn't go find other people. There was 100 people in your class, so you had no choice. But yeah, I'm still close with a lot of guys from, 30, like I said, 30 years later, still have text strings still do fantasy football with some of my high school buddies.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's definitely a cool feeling. It's definitely a cool community, which is why I, like having my kids go there. I want them to have something similar. I think it's something that not everybody has. So it's something we take pride in.
You got any lessons from St. Mary's that you took with you to UVA?
Yeah, because it's similar. I mean, when I got to St. Mary's, everybody was good. Like it was playing sports, especially lacrosse. Everybody was good. So you kind of had to earn your way. You had to fight, to get playing time, and it's still that way. My daughter's, fighting and sacrificing and doing what she's got to do as a teammate just to get on the field, and that's what you want. I mean, that's what you want. You want for your kid. You want them to learn to fight. They need to learn that lesson now, because they need to understand when they get to the real world, when they get to the point of a business. Like you got to be. It's about production. Like nothing else really matters. So, and when I got to UVA, it was just another level. There was so many good players. I mean, and now it's like players from all over the country, right? So like when I get there, you think you're some stud coming out of high school, and you get humbled quickly.
Very.
Which was, I was young. I was 17 when I got there, and it took me some time. It really did. I thought I would just, and I got to play right away, and took my lumps and had some tough times, but it definitely taught me that, look, it's no matter what, you think you should keep getting chances, or you think you should be just given, production. It doesn't work like that way. You have to produce, and because there's somebody behind you waiting to take your spot. Right?
Always.
And that's the key. That's what I learned at St. Mary's and took with me to Virginia, and it just was another level there. So
that's incredible, man. Well, take me back to the recruiting days. What was recruiting like back then?
Oh, totally different. So the summers you just went to like some camps, so like a lot of, maybe they got to see you at Carolina camp or Maryland camp or Virginia camp, or then they're top 205. They started doing that. Your old coach Cottle, and Tierney started that. And so we do 205, and it used to be an invite thing, and then it became a business. So they had more than 205 kids and had multiple sessions. But anyway, so that was kind of your club lacrosse per se. That was what you did. So a lot of the recruiting was actually done at high school games. So your coach, but I think back then a coach got to see you, in a real environment. Sometimes these club games they're just not. To me, they're not a real environment.
No, it's like an AAU. Like there's not stakes.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I don't know who I was talking about it recently with. I'm like, if they recruited now, or like they do now back then, I don't know that I would have played at UVA, because I was more of a late bloomer. I wasn't really. I had a great junior year in lacrosse, and then that summer played well at 205, and that's when I was getting a significant amount of letters that summer. And Dom Starsia was probably the best at recruiting back then, and then Petro was at Hopkins as an assistant. Dick Adele was at Maryland. Who was it? Claremont at Carolina. Those were kind of my schools I looked at. Loyola, Cottle was still Loyola. And those 5 schools, you get to go on visits and like actually visit the school and be a part of, the partying. I mean, it was a party, a lot of times, but you got to see the guys and be around the guys more. It wasn't just talking to the coach. And to me, that matters.
Oh, it does.
You want to see what the group of guys is like. And I'll be honest, I liked them all. Like I didn't have a bad thing to say about any of them. I think Virginia was fun to watch at the time. They had Watson and Doug Knight and those guys playing, and I'm pretty good friends with both of them now. And, I looked up to those guys and was like, I want to play like that. And it was fast and, aggressive and just fun lacrosse. And that's kind of what, as an attackman, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I don't want to slow it down on guys like you beating on me. So we just wanted to run, right? So that was a little bit of the reasoning probably behind why I was just like enthralled by watching those guys play. But I mean, any of those 5 schools obviously would have been, I feel like would have been phenomenal choices. It just ended up going down there. And Dom was very good. Dom was a hell of a recruit, as good as it gets. And we just had an unbelievable group of guys. I say we could, besides like the top 10 teams in the country, we had better games a lot of times in practice, because we were so uber talented. Yeah. At all positions, and deep, probably 30 deep. Yeah. But the recruiting, it was definitely different. I don't think I early committed, and that was the fall of my senior year.
Oh, wow.
So back then, guys they'd wait till spring of their senior year.
I remember those days when it was like there was 1, maybe 2 prodigies a year if you would commit during junior year.
Right.
And it was like, oh my God, that guy must be the second coming.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is unbelievable, because you couldn't sign anything until senior year. Now you get kids in like 7th grade. Yeah. I'm going here. And you're like, what?
Luckily they capped that a little bit and they changed the rules because it got out of hand, and it's impossible to know a kid. I mean, I'm coaching around like an 8th grader, what they're going to look like even as a freshman in high school.
No, they might stop growing.
Right. So it got out of hand. And they fixed it a little bit, but it's still, in my opinion, a little early. It's become sophomore year is your big year, and then summer, because everybody's like on the phones September 1 of junior year now, which to me is still they haven't really even learned how to play high school lacrosse yet. Most of them.
Most of them now.
And see how to play at that faster pace. Because it's different. When you play club, you're playing only your age group, right? So you're playing everybody in, say, 2028 or 2029 class. Well, next thing you know, you go to high school, you're playing against 2026s. Senior, when you're a freshman, it's a different ball game. And some kids can handle that speed, some can't. And you don't know that, until a couple years in, really, and how they're going to do. And that's why, to me, if I'm a coach, and you're starting to see some of this where the no can't misses a lot of times are going early. Yeah. But I think they're holding on with the transfer portal, so they're holding on kids now to see if they adapt anymore to the speed, right? So, they're not taking a chance on 8 kids; they're taking a chance on 4, and then they're going to wait for another 4. It's kind of what I'm seeing, but I could be wrong on that too. I'm not really talking to that many of them. I know the Navy guys and a couple other coaching staffs, but it almost feels like their thinking has to change yearly now because of the rules are changing so fast. Yeah, yeah, and that's such a tough age to project anything. Yeah. I was like you. I was the youngest in my class. Playing varsity football at like 155 pounds as a middle linebacker, soaking wet against linemen that are 290, and all right. And then I look at, just the transformation from my body, my senior year in high school to freshman year in college. I put on like 20, 25 pounds of muscle. It's just such a massive difference. Right? And I mean, my brother was that way. My brother Griffin that I mentioned earlier, he was a little runt for the longest time and didn't hit his growth spurt until senior year. And then all of a sudden, the kid that was getting pushed over and bullied a lot because he was too damn small was now running through every check. He's running past people. And it's like, oh my God, he can actually play. This is weird. And, ends up scoring 3 goals in the championship game. And then people are like, who the fuck is this kid?
yeah, guys bloom at different times, man. It's hard to tell.
I can't imagine trying to recruit, trying to anticipate that kind of stuff. It's hard. It really is.
No.
I mean, look at Patrick Spencer's a perfect example. He grew up.
Great example.
Yeah, I mean, he was, I don't know how big or tall he was, but I know as a freshman at St. Mary's, he was not big.
Short, man.
And ended up at BL as an All-American. And then obviously we know he did college and playing pro now. He's one of the best athletes to ever play lacrosse. I mean, those are people that maybe wouldn't have been recruited in those days of recruit a freshman.
100%.
So it's like you got to kind of let things evolve and happen. I don't envy that coaching recruiting job because that's not fun right now.
No, I got to agree with that. Did your dad give you any flack for going to Charlottesville?
I think he was. I don't know if there was any disappointment or flack or anything like that. It was more from his buddies, because I was probably the oldest son. And we grew up. The Maryland lacrosse family was such a family, especially even around here.
Yeah.
And so all these guys that they had kids that were younger, but I was kind of the first one. My dad having was 26, so I probably was the first one to really come through, and to not go to Maryland.
His buddies were like, what the fuck,
come
man?
On, Eddie, what's going on here? How we screw this up? And then Justin ended up coming too, my brother to follow to Virginia. So he spent 7 years down there.
Oh my God.
And we had him wearing all kinds of orange. And, anytime they play him in other sports, there's a couple times that basketball games were happening when he was down there. So, we get talking trash and stuff like that. It was fun. He embraced it because it was a very fun crew to be around. The families were awesome. Obviously the guys are unbelievable guys. So he can have fun with anybody. So we had a lot of fun down there, but he's still Terp. He doesn't.
Oh yeah.
He doesn't wear orange anymore.
What's it like playing at that level and going from St. Mary's? I remember walking on the field my freshman year of college, first practice, and being completely blown away. And I had great coaches at South River and played against, one of them's Stevie Merle, one of the all-time.
Saw Steve last night.
Yeah, it's a great dude. And one of the all-time points leaders in NCAA history. So I was thinking, hey, it's going to be a bunch of Stevies out there. You got to really step your game up. And the speed it was outrageous how fast everybody was moving, how fast the ball was moving. And I just felt totally overwhelmed with it. It took me a while to kind of get used to it and get acclimated.
Well, I think what happens is you get the best players on every high school team. You end up playing this college team, right? So it's like you're now not just the best players at your school. Before it was like, all right, best player, I'm one of the best players at St. Mary's, one of the best players in the county, maybe even in the state. Now you go to Virginia, it's like that's everybody on the team.
Yeah,
everybody's like that. So if you're not playing to the next level and really picking up your pace, and some guys can't. They may not have it. Just not everybody's built that way. I was pretty, I was middle of the road probably athlete on the team, maybe kind of upper third. But I mean, there was some guys like Jay Jalbert and Ryan Curtis and Chris Fratelli. These guys are thoroughbred athletes, right? Especially Jay and Ryan. That was another level that I'd never seen before, right? I played with Danny Merle, Steve's brother. Danny was pretty similar. Danny had some of the best hands I've ever seen, and could play fast. I mean, so playing with him, I got and there were some guys at St. Mary's that were every bit as good as these guys in Virginia. When you get to the top guys were probably a little bit better, maybe similar. But it's that kind of lower end. Everybody's good in that lower end now. So everybody's fighting for those starting positions. And if you're not, you can't have a bad week of practice. Next thing you know, you're sitting the bench. I mean, because there's somebody behind you that's ready to go.
Exactly.
So it is a hard pill to swallow, but it also teaches you every day matters, right? You got to be ready to play every day. And I'm the same way. It took me probably till my senior year to really grasp that. I mean, I was a 21-year-old senior, so I was young still. So you can also see why some of these older guys thrive when they have a couple more years to kind of become men and understand, what it takes. it does make a difference.
Yeah, it made me resent the guys that were, 24-year-old seniors, and you're like, mother effer.
Yeah.
If I was 24, I would have done great.
Men, right? They're men. I mean, they were men. I was still a boy, or young. I was getting to be a young man, but not there yet.
Yeah,
So.
like I can, get drafted and go to war, but it's a very different body and mindset between an 18-year-old and a 24-year-old, man.
To me, it was more the mindset. Like you said it. It's just I wasn't mentally prepared for that.
Yeah.
You think, because everybody tells you in the recruiting process how great you are, right? And then, you get there and you're like, oh, man, everybody's good. I guess I better step it up here.
Oh, shit.
And to me, I saw the guys that I looked up to when I was there, kind of the leader of, he's still kind of one of my good buddies and a mentor is Tucker Radeball. And the guy was a relentless worker off the field. To the point where like we resented it, like we were there. And now you look at it and go, man, I wish I would have. I wish I had worked harder, because he was such a machine off the field. And when he got on the field, it was easy for him.
Yeah.
Not easy, but you know what I mean? It was easy for him to keep working hard on the field. He never got tired. And he kind of helped will us to that championship in '99. He wasn't the most talented player on the team. He was super talented, but he wasn't the most talented. But he was the unquestioned leader because of his work ethic and just the way he played, not just in games, but the way he approached it every single day, the way he approached it in the summers. It was incredible.
I remember getting recruited, and I was very fortunate. I had a guy 2 years ahead of me at South River who was an absolute stud, freak athlete, Mike Evans.
Yeah.
And Mike.
Exactly. He's the kind of guy I'm talking about.
This dude is, he's benching 400 pounds, running a 4.5. He's the running back on the football team. He's hurdling guys that he has no business hurdling. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Look at this guy.
It's a different level, right?
It's a different level of athlete. And one thing that, I kept in touch with him while he was in college and would go to his games and stuff and just watch and see, root for him and all that stuff, but kind of see how he's doing. And he said, there's one thing that Petro is the coach at that point, would tell him. He said, if you want to be an All-American, you better practice every day like you're an All-American.
Well, Petro was like that too, right? He was relentless. Just a freak talent like Evans, or like Jalbert, but they were also relentless kind of on the field.
Yeah.
Like some guys, I wouldn't say, maybe they're not as relentless off the field like Tucker was, but when they're on the field, it's like, I'm going to run through a wall. Right?
Yeah.
And that's how they practiced. And, Mike was same type of athlete I'm talking about. You get there and you're like, man, these guys are, I got to find another way. Because I'm not going to out-athlete that guy.
No.
I better be trying to be smarter, and then you run into the guy that's like that and super smart, like Mike was. I know on the field, he's like, I got nothing here. It's like, you guys are gonna have to give it to somebody else, right? Because I can't. He's gonna shut me down. But some guys are just that good. That's how Petro was too. And you see that a little bit in high school, especially in the MIAA.
Yeah.
There was plenty of really good players, All-Americans, that I played against in my 4 years at UVA. There was plenty of first-team All-Americans from the Baltimore, MIA group. But, it's the ones that athletically were just another level, and it may not have translated as much in high school. It did, but then they get to college and they're like, oh my God. It's like, what
have I done?
What am I supposed to do with that? But it's fun too. It's like you get to see play with those guys.
Yeah, it's a cool thing, man. How many championships did you guys win?
We just had the one with 99.
Okay.
And Justin was in 2003.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dom was, first one is 99, 03, 06. And then maybe 2012, 11 or 12, something like that.
Yeah,
well,
freaking 11, dude.
Yeah.
We lost to them in that game. It was disappointing.
Yeah, that was the Monday game, right? You guys were just toast. And,
dude, it was,
Virginia, the kid that didn't play Saturday.
Yes.
It was on Monday.
Thank you.
And he was the best player in the field because he had legs.
He had 4 goals in that game, and we're like, are you kidding me? They suspend him for the first game on Saturday, but all of a sudden we can play on Monday. Meanwhile, it's 120 degrees on the field. We're dying. We're getting IVs at halftime. It was
it's like a 7-2 game or something stupid, right?
It was a final of that game. It ended up being like 9-7, but it was not like
low scoring.
It was low scoring. It was ugly. Everybody was dead. We had beaten them in Charlottesville 12-7 earlier in the year. So we thought, all right, well, we got their number. We'll be all right. And
that was Steele's year, right? Steele was
Steele was there.
This is coming out. I remember.
Yep.
I mean, he was great before that, but I was like when he became the legend he was.
Yeah.
Just took over those playoffs.
They had Steele, the Brattons, Gettleman was the goalie. Malfris was running point at the pole. They had a lot. They had a lot of good guys, man.
Yeah.
They had a lot of good guys.
I remember being at that game. That was tough for the Terps. Everybody thought going in, you guys had them.
Oh, we thought so. We were like, damn, dude, Cinderella story. Let's go. We were unranked and all this stuff. And, we had beaten the number 1 team in Syracuse the week before in Foxborough. And so we were on cloud 9, man. We were like, fuck yeah. And then we smoked Duke in the Final Four. I mean, it was like a bloodbath.
Was the football kid playing attack for you guys in that year?
No, that was the year before.
Okay.
That was Yaters.
Yeah.
Yate.
He was a big boy.
Dude, he's a massive human being. Still the biggest hands I've ever seen in my life up close. So after college, you don't do mortgages right away. What do you do?
Ooh, I was a little bit burned out, to be honest, on lacrosse. So they had just started the MLL at that point.
Okay.
And a lot of guys they had done the showcase the year before. And I had kind of finished up pretty strong my senior year, but we lost in the first round up at like Army to Hofstra in like overtime. Tillman Johnson was in the cage freshman year, his freshman year. We were really talented, but kind of young. So we lose, and at that point, I'm like, I got to get out of Dodge for a while. I think I finished up the summer with like Spanish, which always gave me hell in college. So I finished up, and I'm like,
no comprende.
Yeah, I come home, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And a couple buddies of mine lived in Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh yeah.
A couple guys that were at school down there still, and they were maybe doing a 5th year or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going down there. So I moved down there to Folly Beach.
Oh yeah.
And kind of get it like it wasn't easy to find a job back then either. So like I ended up catering and bartending down in Charleston, South Carolina.
Could be worse though. Could be worse. Yeah, it's a nice setting, phenomenal,
man. We live right on the beach. I mean, we're talking Folly Beach is like kind of the surfer, kind of hippier area.
Oh yeah.
Of Charleston. So just living the good life, catering, bartending, being an idiot, and then I got a job at Kiowa, which was unbelievable. So,
oh, wow.
A local guy from Annapolis had moved down there. I don't know. He bought probably in the early 90s in Kiowa before it like exploded.
Yeah.
It was stupid expensive. And they had 2 private courses on Kiowa Island. One of them was Cacique. It was brand new. And they were actually, luckily, they had just opened and were hiring people.
Yeah.
I remember making, I think they paid me a salary like $25,000.
Yeah.
And I got to play free golf. And I was like, a salary? I get a salary? Really?
This is great.
Honestly, it's the only salary I think I've ever had in my life.
Really? Oh, that's so cool.
So, I get a salary. I'm playing. I would show up at 6 a.m., work till 2, and then, just as a cart boy, basically. Cart barn guy would bring the carts out. And there was a no-tip facility, and that's why they paid us, it was one of those places. Really nice.
Yeah.
But then we got to go play golf in the afternoons.
That's cool.
So I got to play a lot of golf. Was basically doing that. Go home some nights we party. It became tough to like those 6 a.m.s because it was a 45-minute drive at least in the morning from Folly to you had to go in town and then back out to Kiowa.
Yeah.
So it was tough, to be partying all the time and making it to work. So partying, we still had a great time. I mean, you're 21 years old, so don't get me wrong, we had fun. But just being out, it was exactly what I needed. Let's put it that way.
That's a wild lifestyle, man. That's so cool.
Well, I tell folks now, I'm like, if it hadn't been for my wife, my girlfriend at the time, it's kind of like, I better get home to her or she's going to find somebody else. So, but if I hadn't gone home, I'd probably still be there doing the same thing, living the good life. No kids, like just a knucklehead, 45-year-old.
You'd be Kenny Powers.
Yeah, exactly. Just some guy like talking about going out and playing like weekend games at the local muni.
Yeah.
So
you
I made the right decision coming home. But anyway.
What year did you come home?
2002, I believe.
Okay.
It was 2002 because I graduated 2001. Went there. It was like the summer of 2002 or like the fall of 2002, something like that. I actually got a job at a title company first.
Okay.
Through golf, because it was, my father-in-law knew this guy. And back then, 2002 and 3, after 9/11, when they really did like plummeted rates, like to get the economy going.
Yeah.
It was refi central. I mean, and it was easy refis. Like you're talking, that's when all the liar loans started, all those types of things. So he was inundated with business because it would just be, he was getting 100 orders, a week for refinances. So he needed somebody basically to come in and just like open up cases for him and maybe train me to like, eventually be a settlement agent or something like that. And I think we quickly found out that it wasn't suited for, the detail piece of the title side. He was like, you're more a talker, James. You ought to get into, and you should be a loan officer. I'm like, okay. That's not a bad idea. He's like, I think you'd be better at that. Funny, I said Dick Ham was his name, the guy that was the title attorney at the time. He just called me recently this week. So, I still have a relationship with him, a great guy. And he was kind of the first one to mention maybe you should look at being a loan officer. So I talked to a couple local guys, a Maryland guy, and I ended up going to kind of a place that was more of a refi shop because you could kind of just call. I think we were calling home improvement leads or something like that.
Yeah.
And cut my teeth on refinances. So those first couple of years, 2003, it was a company called Elite Funding Tenacity Mortgage. A lot of refis, and then I did start doing some purchase stuff. They were big into condo conversions at the time in DC.
Okay.
So 2005 and 6, these guys were going in and buying up apartment buildings and converting them, and it became a pretty big business for them. And then 2007, 8 happened, and it just that whole condo market got collapsed because they were starting to do them all over the country.
Yeah.
And there was just such a influx of. There was too many units on the market.
Oh, I bet.
Not enough buyers. Everybody was, everybody had already bought in the last couple of years with all these easy loans, and nobody could get a mortgage for years because of it. So, but yeah, that's how I kind of cut my teeth when I got home, and just one of those things where I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I got into real estate and started with title. And I'll tell you, getting the title first does help you understand the transaction.
Yeah,
I got to talk to real estate agents. I got to talk to loan officers. You see how settlements go. You see the different. You start understanding the title piece of it, which is important stuff. And I mean, there's a lot of times where folks in our business don't get that kind of training in a different part of the business.
Yeah,
and so
it's kind of nice.
It's been helpful for me for sure. Like there's a lot of things easier for me to pick up on because of that.
Yeah, when you understand the mechanics of the entire transaction and everything that goes into it, it makes it a lot easier when you see the full picture. You're working with all the pieces of the puzzle instead of just looking at the box and knowing, all right, well, this is kind of how it should go, but
for sure
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and you just get a full picture.
Yeah,
you just kind of see everything that's happening, and it also kind of lends itself to what part do I want to play in this?
Yeah, that's true.
Where do I want to be long term with it? So that's how I ended up in the mortgage side.
Well, how has the landscape changed since you got into mortgages?
Oh, how is it not? I mean, it's like, obviously we were talking about this off camera earlier, but the amount of change and just the amount of people it's unbelievable. I mean, there was probably 400,000 or 500,000 loan officers, I think, at some point. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think what it's going to end up being is probably like 80,000 after 20 years in this business.
Damn.
It's just the regulatory stuff after 2008 completely changed the game, and it made it very difficult for just anybody to do mortgages, right? So a lot of folks Plus, just the lack of volume back then got a lot of people out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's still the same basic principles of getting a mortgage, but back then, other than back then, if you could fog a mirror, you were getting a mortgage in the beginning. Once 2008-9 hit, completely changed, and it was full doc again, everything, and it was over the top documentation. But the premise, the change for me, and where I learned, I had to change again. You go to college, you learn you got to change your ways, you got to change your work ethic. I had to change not only my work ethic in the sense it wasn't easy anymore, but it was also I had to work smarter and go after certain avenues of business. The real estate agents drive business now, and they drove it even more back then probably. So I realized I had to get, more in tune with real estate agents and network more with agents, builders.
God bless you.
Yeah, because you want it to be a full, most agents want a full service operation. They want some of it's the control piece. They also want their customer to go through a great experience so that they come back to that agent. A lot of what happens, right, in the transaction, if things go sideways in the transaction, even if it wasn't the agent's fault, they just will associate a bad experience with the agent.
Yes.
Right? So that's why it's so unbelievably important to have mortgage people you trust that are going to give your customer a good experience. And so what I learned is you better prioritize customer service as a loan officer, not only to the agent, but to the customer too, because if you're not with the customer, they're going to tell the agent.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, if you get too much of those complaints,
next thing you know, you're out with that agent.
Yeah, of course. And it should be. That's the way it should be. And then the agents do a good job. Most great agents do a great job of vetting loan officers, and they can smell bullshit pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they can smell, there's a lot of guys in my business that are bullshitters, and they get snuffed out pretty quick by the good agents. Now, a lot of them do a good job still of, they'll find new agents. They just stay on the hamster wheel, find new agents.
Yeah.
But they're always looking for new agents, right? I've always been a relationship guy, and I want to have 20-year relationships. I want to grow with agents, right? I want to grow with you, help you build your business. Same thing on the builder side. Do a lot of new construction, and I've grown my business with the builder as they've grown. And I think it's to me, it's just a more fun way to do things. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier about, Cape St. Clair, you grow up in third grade until eighth grade playing with the same guys, and you want to grow with them, right?
It's a great idea.
A lot of times it's very parallel to that. It's not just a transactional thing. It's like, some of my best friends in the business are agents, or, they're agents I've been working with forever, builders, or, guys that I would invite to my birthday party. And that's what you want.
Makes it more enjoyable.
It does. Yeah, are you going to have that with everybody? Of course not. But you want to enjoy. An agent I respect in town, who's one of my good friends, invite me to his son's senior night for baseball.
Oh, that's cool.
Those are kind of things that's like it's nice to be a part of their life too, and see what you helped them build. And I think I think agents feel the same way about their lenders. Like I like to see. They like to see me do well. That's what they want. Same thing on the builder side. And titles, everybody, you can kind of see over the last 20, 25 years, that's how the great people in the business have built their business. There's not a lot of just transactional folks that are just grinding the phones all day long. They're building relationships.
Yeah. And we've had and this is slightly off topic, but I promise I'll weave it back in there, Trump style. We've had a couple of clients and people close to us pass away in the last year, and it makes you realize how finite time is. Yeah. And the older you get, the less of it you have, obviously. Duh, that's how it works. But it makes you want to do what you do and be happy doing it. Do something that you feel like you're making a difference. But if you can do it with people that you enjoy doing it with, it makes it a lot more enjoyable. And you're not here forever.
Well, I don't know if my wife likes me reminding her that she doesn't care now. The kids are young, but some of my best relationships I've met through golf.
Yeah.
Lacrosse and golf, because you're kind of, it's like-minded folks, right? Like, so you want to be able to go out and play golf with somebody. First of all, I think you can really understand somebody and their character on the golf, how they are on the golf course. But I also think you can go out and do something you enjoy and talk shop with them.
Yeah.
And talk about other things, obviously, too. But it's just a way of, kind of de-stressing while also working.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of great relationships through golf. Like, a couple of my builders, a couple of my real estate agents, we go out and play golf. I met guys like you through lacrosse. Some of my colleagues I've met through lacrosse. Like, we play lacrosse after college together, and we go to games and things like that. And it's a kind of a bond.
Yeah.
That you're right. It makes it more enjoyable. That's the thing, because it's work is work. And I love doing mortgages. I love helping people get houses. I love getting a phone call I got the other day from a young couple that they were just letting me know they were out their first day at the house, and the kids were outside and running around, right? And they're just thanking me, things like that. But I won't talk. I'll stay in touch with them a little bit, but I don't talk to them weekly or monthly like I will some of my agents or some of my builders,
sure,
title guys, things like that. So like you want to have people that are in it with you.
Exactly.
That's
in the trenches with you, doing it every day. It's back to the team building stuff. Right. You got guys that each one of you has a role, and it's nice to enjoy doing what you do, and it makes it easier when you got a team.
And by the way, they also got your back.
Yeah.
If there's a mistake is made, or maybe it's something that wasn't your fault, or an agent wants to know that the lender is going to, do everything they can to get that problem solved, or do whatever, even if it's whoever's fault it is, it doesn't really matter at that point. It's like nobody cares. Let's just get the problem solved, right?
Yep.
And having your back and not just putting your hands up, it's a big deal. And if somebody's in the trenches with you, they're fighting to get every deal done for you, because it's obviously our livelihood, and our kids depend on it, right?
Yep.
So that's an important piece, and it's nice to know you have people that are in the trenches with you.
You coach and mentor your kids and their teams. How do you lead both at home and in the office?
So having 6 of them,
it's a lot, man.
It is, and but you understand that their personalities, every single one of them is different, right?
Yeah.
And so my oldest daughter, I coached her for years, and I could say anything I wanted to her, and I could be the hardest on her, and she'd be fine. Like, she would let her roll off her shoulders, and it allowed me to be hard on other kids and make it look like I was just as hard on, I wasn't just hard on them. I was hard on my daughter the hardest. And if she could handle it, then they could too. My other kids are all different with that. Some of them they're not all the same. I've noticed the same thing with the kids I coach, right? Like, everybody's personalities are different. You got to see what motivates them. It's no different than in the office, right? Like, some people need a pat on the back. Some people need a kick in the butt. The great leaders, and I wouldn't put myself in a great leader category. I do my best. I try to lead by example, and help people when I can and be responsive. That's kind of my leadership, traits. I mean, that's my style. I'm not a rah-rah guy. I don't come in and every morning and be like, pounding on the table, let's go guys, cut guy. And I'm not.
You're not McConaughey and Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, no, not even close. Although that's a great movie. And I'm not even like the smoothest salesman talker. So like, even like coming in and listening to me talk. I mean, I think guys my folks do probably benefit from hearing some of what I say, but it's not like I'm a hard sell. I establish my clients, trust kind of the same way I do with my referral partners. It's, just straight honesty. I'm not smart enough to remember lies. So
right.
I'm
or BS. That's a great way to put it.
I try to sound as professional as I can, and as, what's the word? Basically I'm trying to, like, I know what I'm doing, like, as informative as I can, like making them feel like I actually know what I'm talking about, which I kind of think I do. Yeah. At least I hope I do. So, as far as, leadership wise, I think that's kind of all you can do, like lead by example. Now, with coaching is slightly different because you're kind of, you're forming everything on a daily basis. You're putting it's when you're leading the loan officers or a team, you got to kind of give them some freedom to sell how they sell best.
Yeah.
Lacrosse, you still have to kind of work more as a team. It's a little more individual in our business. But again, it's still the biggest thing is the personalities. Like you just got to manage different personalities. Some kids can handle you yell at them. Some kids can't. Some kids can be the scapegoat and they play better. Some kids need to be told they're the greatest thing ever. My loan officer's the same way. In fact, probably more so.
Yep.
Right.
What's one of the most underrated traits of a top tier mortgage broker?
Responsiveness.
Yeah.
I'd say there's two things. I work with Sam Rosenblatt, who's probably the top loan officer in the region, has been for 10, 15 years, at least one of them. And, Sam is incredibly responsive with his customers. I've kind of built mine the same way, responsive with your referral partners, because a lot of times you need quick answers. Folks need quick answers.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting back to them that day, you better be getting back to them the first thing in the morning. They better know why. Or, sometimes it's a quick text, hey, I'm at a funeral with family. I can't make it. Do you want me to have somebody call you? Or can I call you tomorrow? Most, like 95% of the time, you just call me tomorrow. Sorry for your loss. It's responsiveness. The other thing is problem solving, which is the harder part. So the responsiveness is, that's probably 75% of being a great loan officer, and you can make an awesome living if you're just responsive. I think the top tier guys are the greatest loan officers I've seen. In fact, the greatest real estate agents are problem solvers, and there's a bit of a difference in intellect there. Like you got to obviously be smarter,
right?
You can't just be I'm just going to grind out the work. Like so, there's another level of good there. So I would say those two things. I mean, one of my old mentors used to say, just do what you say you're going to do and call people back.
Yeah.
He's like, that's 90% of the business. And I agree with him there. But doing what you say you're going to do is, if you say you're going to get a loan closed, you're going to call somebody back, you do. Right. And so that's a big piece of it. And it's, anytime you give a pre-approval letter, you're basically saying,
I got this.
Yeah, I got this. And you better get it.
Yeah.
And that's doing what you say you're going to do. And if the better you get at problem solving, the more confident you are with this pre-approval letter.
Right.
Because there's all kinds of stuff. You guys see it in your business, we see it in our business. All kinds of problems that get thrown at us on a daily basis. And the overwhelming majority of the ones you guys see, I don't hear about. The overwhelming majority of problems we see, we try not to bother you with because it's not something you want to hear on. It's not something you need to deal with.
Right.
That said, the big ones you will hear about some. And, you hope it's not something that the loan officer created, which happens a good amount, or something they missed. So, I guess if you want to throw in doing your due diligence up front, getting documents. One of the things that changed my career was a blow-up deal, 2012, 2011 or 12, something like that. It was back in the day when financing, you had to get everything. You're getting tax returns on a W-2 employee. You were getting, all their bank statements. You're getting, basically blood samples, everything you possibly get. I mean, it was crazy. But it taught me to be, to get all that stuff and review it up front, be thorough up front, rather than, we'll get it, 2 weeks down the line. No, I started asking for it up front. But I had one in particular deal that, I missed a guideline on. It was a crazy guideline on a jumbo loan. And I'll never forget it, but it changed my career in the sense that, you got to be diligent up front and really comb through guidelines on products that you may not know. Now, since then, guidelines have changed so much.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not as crazy with some of that stuff, but it definitely taught me because that customer, even though it was really a crazy one, they'll never do business with me again. They shouldn't. I don't deserve that business. But that, everybody has those stories, and it really is how you get up from it, how it shapes you as a loan officer. Do you just brush it off and say, it doesn't matter, it wasn't my fault, or take responsibility for it? Say, a lot of guys would have missed that, but I'm never going to miss it again.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what the great ones, they don't do that. They don't miss anything.
Well, you mentioned that deal. Do you have any good ones that kind of tested you or that you're proud of?
One of the first builders I ever started working with, I'd been we had these kind of mini refi booms after 2010. And so I'd get some of that, and I was doing some purchase business. We started to build my career. But I was kind of feeling like with all these kids, I needed somewhat more some more consistency. So I'm like, I need to branch out and find some other ways of getting business too, just to add them. So I reached out to this builder again I had a contact through playing golf, and they just happened to be looking for another lender at the time, and played golf, and they threw me a tough deal kind of at the end of the year. And it was a kid right out of dentist school, and he was becoming a dentist, but he's a 1099.
Yeah.
And you and me both know, 1099 employee like you guys are, you got to have somewhat of a work history to know how the expenses are going to look, right, before you can get a loan. And my mentor at the time, he and I got into it and dove into it hard, and the builder put some pressure on us to get it done. Because it was back when builders, anybody went through 08 as a builder might have had it worse than even the lenders did.
Yeah.
These guys had purchased land and had things, and they were losing their shirts.
Yep.
And so these guys were trying to rebuild their business, and they really needed to get it done because their credit lines the next year depended on what they closed the year before. And so closing this by the end of the year was a huge deal. Well, I worked on Christmas Eve to get a loan approval, and then worked on, we had some conditions we had to get to. So I'm working on New Year's Eve, not all night, but we ended up getting this thing closed. And I've been working with them ever since. That's 15 years ago or 13 years ago. So you never know that one deal that's going to change your career, which is why you got to kind of treat them all, with the utmost respect, because something could just change it. So you could save a deal, or, get a deal done that, on a timeline that nobody else could do, and next thing you know, that's your referral source for life, or that's your partner for life. So that was probably one of the ones that, I think about as, one of the more important ones that ever got done. Definitely proud of that. Yeah. But I think the one I talked about before that, the one that beat me up, the one where I missed something, it was that's the one I remember more. You just I can't ever let that.
Like that athlete mentality. I remember the losses more than I remember the wins.
Exactly right.
Yeah. How do you balance being responsive and being everything for the client, but also having 6 kids, a wife that needs you? That's something that I think top agents struggle with, top brokers struggle with. Have you been able to find that balance, and if so, how?
Yeah, it's getting better. The better the older I've gotten, the more I've learned to shut it down a little bit and just be, you're still responsive. I mean, the problem with the phones is that you can do it from anywhere, right? So you go on vacation and you're like, I can't miss anything. But I've learned to trust my team more, or at least try to trust them. That's a tough thing.
Yeah.
I talked to my dad at Aussie about that. My dad's ran a pretty big CPA firm that his father had started. And my aunt took it over, and they built it, to a pretty good size. But he would tell me he even struggled with trusting your team, with your work, because, nobody's you. You take responsibility for what you're doing. So, but the more you trust that you've trained them properly, or the more that they prove that they're ready to go, it's on you to trust them, because they want that. They want the responsibility, right? So I've gotten better with that. But it's still a struggle, you're still trying to be there and be present for them. And it goes quick, so I've already got one in college, and my youngest is 10 now. It's hard to believe. We were still playing lacrosse, and my kids were running around, right? And it happened so fast. And I honestly, I'm enjoying them as much as ever now, because they're older, and you can talk to them a little more. The teenage daughters thing is a little something to figure out. They all of a sudden have an attitude. They don't look at you as their hero dad anymore. It's like dad's the one that's a pain in the ass, and mom. But they do have their personalities now. You're seeing them become young adults, and my daughter in college, another one going next year, and it's like you kind of realize, all right, I did something right.
Yeah.
And it's nice to also be like, look, I busted my butt so that they can have, the things that they want to have.
So they can have the stuff.
But the one thing I will tell you is having 6, they had to fight for everything too. Right? So it's not like we didn't have endless amounts of money or anything. So like, guys, you gotta go work on your own. You gotta earn this, that type thing. So it does, having 6 of them, they learn pretty quick.
That's cool, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's do a little rapid fire Q&A before we wrap.
Yeah.
A favorite local spot for a celebration dinner in Annapolis?
Probably depends on what the celebration is. Tara and I would love Vin 909.
Oh, yeah.
We've always loved that place. I don't know how long I've been there now, probably 20 years, but that's usually if we ever have, we don't, over the last 20 years, we haven't had that many nights out, right? At least it's just the 2 of us. But that's a great spot. If it's more like a family type, party type thing, it's always McGarvey's. McGarvey's is kind of a family, affair for us. My mom was actually one of the managers there for Mike Ashford when I was born.
No
so
kidding.
There's pictures of me, like in the Johnny Jump Up in the manager's office. My dad's on the wall in the back, right? So I think
cool.
our McGarvey's team got a picture up in there.
Oh yeah.
So my dad's McGarvey's team, Ashford did, years ago with legends from Maryland on that team. So it's just kind of like that's been our place. We go there for Christmas Eve every year and see the same folks.
That's cool, man.
So I love it there. There's Chop Tank's great now, like some of the newer spots, but of the ones that I would say, if I had 2, one for my wife and I to go to or the family to go to for a real nice dinner, probably Vin 909, maybe Luna's.
Yeah.
And then the other McGarvey's is the clear-cut bar.
The old staples, man.
She's the staple, right?
One piece of financial advice you wish more people followed?
Start saving early. It's never too early to save, and pay attention to your credit. I think a lot of kids don't understand it's important to pay your bills on time.
Yeah.
And then people get too far down the line, and then they go to buy a house and like, well, why can't I get? Well, because you got late. Well, it was just a $30 late payment or something, but it doesn't matter. It's a pattern, right? So I think our financial literacy is probably one of the biggest flaws of our school systems now.
That's come up a few times on the pod.
Has it?
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like that's one of those things where I was lucky enough to have a CPA father.
Yeah.
So conservative, very, very much a trusted advisor to his customers. And so my grandfather, even more conservative. Great Depression. World War II veteran hero. So we were just a conservative family. So it was don't overspend. Don't save your money. And then I'll never forget an old school agent, Dave Wright, from years ago, was a friend of my father's, said to me, Jamison, as soon as I got in the business, save your money. He said, because you're gonna have times where he's like, just make sure you save your money. So in our business, that would be the biggest piece of advice.
Yeah.
Save your money.
Save your money.
You never know when you're going to need it.
Hardest part about being a mortgage broker?
Probably the hours and the unpredictability of the hours, I would say. To me, that's the toughest thing probably about your guys' business too, right?
Yeah.
You just don't, you're kind of always on.
Yep.
I'd say that's the toughest thing. There's no 9 to 5 to it. And even there's not a lot of vacations.
You can try.
Yeah. Good luck, right?
Exactly.
So I'd say that's the toughest part.
Best part of being a dad of 6?
Just having them around you all the time. It's just kind of like you're never lonely, which is nice. Do you wish you had some alone time? Sure.
Sometimes.
Yeah, but I think just, the best part of being a dad of 6 is, you got, kind of your crew for life.
Yeah. That's cool.
Your people for life. So, and they're all great kids. they're all different. That's probably, I'd say that maybe the best thing though is seeing all the different personalities. It's just and the different people in your family that they're kind of like.
Yeah.
That makes sense. This one's like mom. This one's like dad. This one's like my grandfather. This one's like the uncle. Like you can see the personalities coming out of them on different people in the family, which is very cool.
That's cool, man. Other than your phone, what's one tool or piece of technology you can't run your business without?
Other than your phone, computer. I mean, everything's so computer based now. I guess I could write everybody's info, but it's almost impossible to do what you need to do without having a computer. All of our technology, because you can do it. Nobody wants to print anything anymore.
Yeah.
In fact, this is actually a cool story. When I worked at a bank years ago, they were initially trying to go to the paperless stuff. It was like 2007 or 8. And the first month they did, they saved $400,000 in paper costs. And then it went away from that. Everything was paper again after 2008 and 9. But then as we've gotten back into like everything's, right, you guys probably don't print anything anymore. I mean, all the contracts are all done paperless, and all of our disclosures are mostly done paperless, except for the stuff that has to be recorded. So you can't really do anything without a computer anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree. UVA or St. Mary's, you had to get the band back together again. Which team's going to win the backyard tournament?
UVA versus St. Mary's?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question, because a lot of those St. Mary's guys all played major D1 college too. Probably UVA, but it would be closer than you think. I mean, we were number one team in the country in high school, so that team was uber talented. I mean, it was an all-star team of Anne Arundel County, frankly. Minus a few guys, but it was incredible.
That's awesome.
It'd be close, but UVA.
What's your pregame pump-up song?
Now, because I coach the girls, probably like Pink, Raise Your Glass. I get in the car and I put that on, and I'm like, embarrass my daughter with her friends in the car. If it were me, it would probably be like me actually playing still. Probably some sort of like Led Zeppelin, one of the Led Zeppelins. So there's like 50 Led Zeppelin songs that I could pick, and or maybe Rage Against the Machine or something like that. But now, because it's my kid. Oh, I'll tell you this: my boys, they love gangster rap.
Of course, yeah, man.
NWA is a huge one. Dre. So I love NWA. What's the one? Express Yourself. Because it's a little less cussing in that one. Yeah. But my boys, obviously, they love the ones like, fuck the police.
Yeah, of course.
Just because of the cuss words. Of
course.
They're 10 and 12, so that's all they care about, the foul stuff. But we don't let their mother know that they're listening to that stuff.
No, she won't watch this or listen to it.
A lot of my pregame pump-up songs are kind of based around with my kids. Either embarrassing them or enjoying it with them. All
right. For anybody that's listening who is just getting into lending or maybe thinking of switching careers, what's your biggest piece of advice?
Know what you're getting into. And then, frankly, if you're going to do it, you got to be 100% in.
Yeah.
You can't do this. I understand that some folks need to maybe bartend on the side or wait tables as you're getting going, or work another job. But I would tell you, it's probably going to take you longer to get going that way, because it becomes a 18-hour-a-day job. Not because you're constantly sitting at a computer working, but you're always thinking about it. You're always working on it some way, right? So it's real estate agents and mortgage guys. We are 100% commission, so you have to be kind of always on, right? You're always thinking about it. So I would say, don't just, if you're going to do it, you got to be 100%. I'm doing this. It's like you're going to run a marathon. You better be all in. You don't just get out there and try to run a marathon, right? You got to prepare.
I've made that mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It's not good.
No, it's bad. This is a marathon, man, and treat it that way. So you got to it's a daily grind to get yourself ready for it, and know you're going to get your butt kicked, and it's probably going to take you. I was pretty tight for a long time, a lot of the Northwestern Mutual guys.
Sure.
And I learned a lot from their sales techniques and what they did to build their businesses and selling insurance. And they were very good at, calling everybody they know and then asking them to call everybody they know. Or you're asking them for 6 people, and they kind of did that 6.
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of exponentially grew their call pyramid. and built their businesses that way. And it's kind of like, I would say some of it like that with us, but it's more of the fact that you got to go all in. It's going to take you probably 2 to 5 years. And if you don't go all in immediately, it's going to take even longer. So the more all in you go at the start, the faster you're going to start seeing results. And I've had some guys that I managed at my previous company, some guys that I manage now that I'm seeing that where they're all in and they're crushing it already. It's fun to see.
It's a cool thing to watch, man.
It is.
Where can people find you if they're looking for guidance, mentorship, or just want to work with your team?
Call me. Yeah. I mean, just my cell phone. I work right here in Annapolis. I'm on Riva Road, so my office is always open. I love anybody young and aggressive and hungry and poor. Those are the ones we want because they generally they're resourceful. It's athletes or the card players maybe, or maybe you're in a different type of sales. I've seen some guys from car sales that have really killed it in mortgage because they understand, what it takes. They understand the grind. There's no shortcut. So if you're in a different career and you want to talk to somebody, please give me a call. I'd love to just tell you about how shitty it is at times and how great it is too.
Well, it's honesty and authenticity, and I think that's what people want.
Yeah, to me, you don't bullshit them.
Exactly. Jamison, this has been great, man.
Great being here.
I appreciate you coming on and doing this, from bartender to branch boss, lacrosse player to mortgage pro, and one of the most trusted names in Annapolis real estate finance. If you got value from this, share it with a teammate, a fellow agent, someone navigating the mortgage maze. Until next time, keep making moves. This is Dealmakers.
Thanks, Shay.
Yeah, man.